actually makes up quite a large amount of the aggregate market for the south, and especially London. So somewhere around 50% of London's natural aggregate demand is fulfilled from marine dredge.
Several customers have put out sort of direct fed dredge solution in, and had to basically short circuit all that effort, go straight into the plant, screen out the aggregate, grab the sand, do water, destack it, and they can do in sort of 1 or 2 days what used to take them a week.
And rely on that head scope for it's going to change. You know, maybe with the dredge localized area, the change is slightly less, but with the marine, it could be from several different deposits. So we're always keeping that scope for how's that material changing through the life. You know, that comes maybe in 20, 30 years. It's always changing.
And put one of our plants in, and then went back and reprocessed his old tailings, and pulled out an amazing amount of material from his own tailings from his old plant.
Yeah, same in the US. What you're finding is that the dredge keeps becoming dirty and dirtier, and the sand is becoming finer and finer. So you need more specialized plants to be able to achieve the concrete cuts, whatever specification. So that's why it's in a lot of sets over there. It's trying to recover these finer applications. In the past, they just used, for example, pacifiers and screws. You know how much efficient that is. So a lot of our work in the US is showing that our application, our plants can recover what's brought to them, and not just sending that to the pond or sending that to things.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to episode 8 of Talking Tons. I'm your host, Lauren McMaster, part of the marketing team here at CDE. Joining me today are 3 of my colleagues from across the business. First up, we have Gustavo Brasil, Business Development Manager for the Americas. Gustavo started his CDE career in the technical team before moving over to business development. Next, we have Jason Hartmann, Business Development Manager for Australasia. Jason brings over 20 years experience in mining and mineral processing. And finally, we have Thomas Doyle, Business Development Manager for the South of England. Thomas also brings experience from the product development team at CDE. In this episode, we'll be diving into the valuable role of dredging in maintaining waterways and unlocking valuable sand resources. We'll explore the scale of these operations, the latest trends, and how we can extract this material efficiently and responsibly.
I suppose I'll jump in. Thanks, Lauren. For me, I cover the south of the UK, so in the south of England, there's quite a large amount of dredging operations, and it's typically marine dredge, so large dredge vessels out at sea, suction off the seafloor on the dredge vessel into shore, offloaded on shore, and then processed through various washing applications. So we see that it actually makes up quite a large amount of the aggregate market for the south, and especially London. So somewhere around 50% of London's natural aggregate demand is fulfilled from marine dredge, as well as even if you go down to Kent or the southeast, those sort of areas, you're still at like 30% of the application. Very low sand quarry volumes in them areas, but quite a lot of development, so they require a lot of material. So marine sort of fills that void, and the material typically historically would have been quite clean coming in, so it was almost an easy win for processors. Quick wash and straight out to market, good concrete sand or aggregate for the buildings. So over the years, we've seen that change a lot, and it's continuing to change. The nice applications and the nice material is depleting. We're seeing that material getting dirtier and dirtier, and we've just been working probably quite a lot this past, I would say, 3-4 years on those applications as they just get trickier and trickier. I don't know if for you, Gustavo, do you see a lot of...
Not really dredge in the Americas, at least not that I had experience with that. Over there we see mostly table water dredging. So nearby rivers, customers are processing material that they can't process in rivers anymore, depending on the state or country, very varied over there. But they are dredging nearby rivers where the material is under the table of water. They dredge there directly from there in the power plants on the way. But not in...
Yeah, Australia is very similar. So dredging within river systems is quite rare these days. It's again more and more difficult. It's gradually being phased out. So Australia and New Zealand, I've found the majority of the sources are, as soon as you get into the water table, you're generally near a river or something, and you can dredge straight out. So unless you sort of avoid those long reach excavators and picking which are clean down and try and get a milk land. So we don't, and if we don't have a marine sort of aggregate dredging,
Is that dredge fed? Is that direct dredge to wash plant? There's no.
Yeah, so in the past, there's been people sort of dredging or turkey's nest, sort of an area that's bunded off, gets dredged into. They try and decant the water out, and then wait for several days, going with a loader or something, try and pick it up and then screen it. And it's a huge amount of time and effort for a relatively small win. You had a lot of dollars every time you touch it, right? It's another $1. So we've had several customers that put out sort of direct fed dredge solution in, and had to basically short circuit all that effort, go straight into the plant, screen out the aggregate, grab the sand, do water, destack it, and they can do in sort of 1 or 2 days what used to take them a week. Now really it's sort of off changing.
And Gustavo as well, your application, it's all direct dredge to plant. There's no, same as Jason's saying there.
It's case by case.
Yeah.
Some customers, they like to have the intermediary step because they're dredging so much capacity, hundreds of thousands of cubic meters per day. So pumping cost becomes quite a limitation.
Yeah.
So they do it, as you mentioned, Jason, the turkey nest. You know the name actually, is a good name. But yeah, it's very case by case. Normally we go up to 6,000 gallons per minute. You can go for more. But it's always customer preference,
Are those projects, so historically the marine dredge stuff would have been very sand heavy deposits and small volumes of aggregate. That's been changing over the years. Is it very sand heavy? You as well?
Yeah, the majority of what we see is pretty much all the sand with a small amount of stones, simple one like black stones or things like that. And generally quite a clean resource. It's sort of only maybe 1% silt or something like that. It's not really a desilting application, and it's all the materials already sort of within spec. You're really just handling that volume of water, screening out your oversized, maybe making 1 or 2 sands and dewatering and stacking it.
I know I was saying like the big pull for the marine dredge in South UK and especially London was just the lack of other resource getting, let's say, so close to the heart of the city. You can take it in the river, process it. Are you finding that those dredge applications for you, or is it in areas that have little opportunity for sand from other resources? Is it just another alternative that?
Yeah, I think it's that's that same story that we see all around the world. Sand has been depleted. It's coming from further and further away. So people are getting more creative with where they source it. That's in some regions in Australia, it's traveling 100, 200 kilometers from where it's sourced to where it's cast in concrete. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, same in the US. What you're finding is that the dredge keeps becoming dirty and dirtier, and the sand is becoming finer and finer. So you need more specialized plants to be able to achieve the concrete cuts whenever the CKH unit. So that's why it's in a lot of sites over there. It's trying to recover these finer applications. In the past, they just use, for example, pacifiers and screws. You know how much inefficient that is. So a lot of our work in the US is showing that our application, our plants can recover what's brought to them and not just sending that to the pond or sending that to things.
Funny touch on that, the marine sand typically very, very clean, very low silt. So once it's been through the cyclone, dewatered, very dry, all the silt's been removed, we can actually meter silt back to the product that's been thickened, so it's going on not too wet, into the sand, and keep it within that concrete spec. Still utilize the silt, because sand. These sites are quite urban, small sites. The sludge can't go back to sea.
Yeah,
it has to go somewhere. The disposal costs are very high, so if you can utilize it, the product, it's getting used up quite well. And we've got quite a neat system working on a few sites there doing it, which has been very good. I suppose for you that's probably slightly different because it's large bodies inland.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so the sort of direct fed dredge solution is a huge amount of water. So you need a pond for it to go back into. Yeah, it's about 800 cubic meters an hour, 1,000 cubic meters an hour, something like that. You mentioned gallons earlier. I don't 600 gallons per minute. What's that in cubic meters? Do you know?
Oh, it's divided by 3.3, so 2,000 meters per hour, 100
Okay.
what we're seeing a lot there now is the concern about the returning water. So they want to retreat the water to have a more clarified water bed.
Yeah.
We don't have the dirty ponds. So in the future it can be used at lakefront application. It's not just a waste.
One of the other applications we've seen in Australia, at least, and it's probably applicable in except America, I would have thought, mining and tailings. There's, for whatever reason, there might be some sterilized material underneath that area that decided to move that tailings pond from somewhere to somewhere else, dredge it from A to B. You can intercept that material on the way through and pull out valuable lost material, or potentially it's just dewatering and getting rid of patterns again altogether.
Is that as well? You're saying like, so trying to bulk material there, or can they actually reduce? If you're pulling the tailings out of it, are you reducing the size of area needed to do that?
You are, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount of material mass that you pull out. Yeah, multiply value delivers us gold or a tin or something up there.
With obviously with the river dredging, big environmental shift there away from river dredging, even seeing some of the shore dredging, things like that. Is that something you see probably in Australia as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so the dredges rarely go in the river. They go sort of next to the river in the water table.
Yeah.
That's acceptable to the ETA.
Right.
Everything is.
You already touched on as well, Gustavo. Was
Yeah.
that for you?
It's fascinating that dredging is also important for river management. So the correct flow. So a lot of rivers in the US, they need to be dredged, otherwise it clogs up and boats can't pass it. So there is a sweet spot where river dredging is still going to be allowed, but you can't over dredge, otherwise you can damage with rivers.
We had a customer in Australia that had a different style of dredge plant, also more homemade, vacuum overflow software arrangement, and put one of their plants in, and then went back and reprocessed his old tailings and pulled out an amazing amount of material from his own tailings from his old plant.
So it was just his own inefficiency of first time dredge.
Yeah, that's right.
Hits it again.
They're still working a lot on those redredging material that has been there in the ponds. That is all that lost material that they can always redredge that, but sometimes they don't have the right solution to do that. It's always going back to the ponds.
How do we see this dredging market developing in the future? Is it something that we think is going to expand as there's less other sources of material, or is it something that maybe with different legislation there might be reduced opportunities? What direction do we see that going kind of globally?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think we see some paddock style resources. They might not be right next to a river, but it's quite low in the water table. And trying to excavate and handle something that's wet, or trying to handle it as a dry material just doesn't work very well. So I think some of those trippier resources that might not have been exploited in the past, it can definitely be done at a dredge sort of application. Again, as the easier, nicer material has been depleted that's closer to where it's used.
I touched on it, I think, already, but especially for London, it lets them get a very high quality product very close to where it needs to be. And less transport on ground. There's some data there about how one barge of dredge material shifts so many trucks off the road to move that volume of material close to source. But we're seeing that material get trickier and trickier. So definitely the process is changing. We've had some nice projects out there handling that material now. But we're seeing as good a solution with the trickier material too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, dredge, it's a cheap way of moving material from the water and sand. So it will grow, it's going to be very application specific. Dredge are going to be decreased because of regulation, but it's very localized markets. It's hard to have a global view on what's going to happen to say, oh, this is going to happen all in the world, because they're localized according to the market dynamics of each region.
Yeah, no, you mentioned a good point about the trucking versus pumping. Yeah, that's absolutely a thing. We're seeing that a little bit emerging in some of the mining applications where people have got quite an extensive fleet of trucks that are road, they pick it up, they drive it a kilometre or two or three. Trucks going back and forth, and if you can have a marine mobile mining unit out there that's or similar to a dredge. Effectively, you feed it in out there, pump it back to the plant, and you avoid having to truck material back and forth.
Yeah. And even if you imagine in terms of carbon emissions, well, we use electricity instead of running diesel and trucks. It's compared in the mining industry a lot.
And what, when you're thinking about a dredging project, is there any specific considerations, when you're working with a customer and you're designing a solution? Is there differences with the dredged material that you need to take into account when you're coming up with what that solution is going to be?
Certainly the plant needs to be designed to interface with the dredge. They're couples effectively in these applications, so that as the client finds the size of the dredge that they want to use for their application, and then you marry the plant to that. So it's tuned. Absolutely.
It's also about the long-term vision of the plant. As the mine progresses, the bread gets further away in the plant. So we might need to add booster pumps, and we might need to add other intermediary equipment to achieve what you're looking for. And since you're not seeing exactly what you're feeding to the plant, there's also a very important component of understanding the deposit prior to the plant. So we know what they could really see. But since it's all underwater, you don't see a lot of it really.
And is that kind of through testing?
That's core drilling, testing, site surveying, quite a demanding work before anything starts.
Yeah, I agree. It's the exact same process. And if you want to see the material and rely on that head scope it's going to change.
Yeah.
Maybe with the dredge localized area, the change is slightly less, but with the marine, it could be from several different deposits. So we're always keeping that scope for how's that material changing through the life. That comes maybe in 20, 30 years. It's always changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like another sort of variation on the theme is people need to sort of dig down into the water table to start with. So starting off effectively dry, that you might not have a whole lot of time drying material before you get into wet. So we actually have some hybrid plants that can take a dry feed, and then once they excavate enough material and can fill a pond and drop a dredge in, it then converts across to a wet plant.
I think we've covered kind of a great kind of overview of the market and all those kind of regional variations. Before we wrap up for today, is there any kind of last thoughts you want to share on dredging?
I guess it's really just understanding your resource and your plan and figuring out how best to extract that. What the plant might mean to look like to be able to recover the sand from a resource.
That brings us to the end of today's discussion on dredge sand. If you'd like to explore more around this topic, you'll find links and resources in the description below.